Right, so I'm going to try and see if this is working. I've got it set up now that it should drop the music volume when I'm talking. So I'm relying on looking at OBS to see if that's the case, and it's dropping it by an amount. So we'll see if that stays the way, and when I stop talking it should go back to normal. Unfortunately, when I am doing the prep, I'll have the Dremel working in the background. It makes a lot of noise, so it actually would be dropping the music volume a long way. So I'll just mute the microphone when I am actually working away. But feel free to ask questions throughout anyway. So, goal for today is to do something a little bit different. I've been doing some work on a couple of fossils in the background before coming online. A couple of DACs, and I've removed most of the cap. I've been trying a different stylus tip on the Dremel. The normal Dremel stylus tip I've been working with is normally a sharp single pointed one. I've got the chisel tip on at the minute that you can probably just about make out. So that seems to be working a little bit better for removing matrix on soft rock as it was recommended. The downside is that it might struggle with some of the harder rock. But what I'm going to try today is this pretty manky looking specimen. This is a Hildoceras, or at least part of a Hildoceras. So you've got the outer whorl here and another edge of the whorl here. You can see it's a different ammonite to the others. So Dax, or Dactylioceras specimen here next to a Hildoceras. The Dax specimen, you can see the ribs all the way around. If you look at the side, it's a completely smooth edge. If you look at a Hildoceras, it doesn't really have defined ribs. It has sort of ridges, but not really in the same way. And if you look at the edge, it's got this lovely single line that kind of runs down the middle of the keel. So that's the way to tell them apart when you're looking on the beach. But this one has got one edge of the keel there, the other one here. Then I will have a look-see what else is going on. It looks like there's multiple belemnites actually in the side here, so I have no idea what's going on in the middle of this specimen. But that's what I'm going to have a look at prepping, at least on this side, because I think this is the easier side to prep down. We'll try it on this tip, because I think this should come away reasonably well looking at it. But we'll see. I've never prepped a Hildy before, so this will be my first go at it. The chisel tip I've only used on those two DACs. And if all goes well, then I'll get this one down to the center, and then maybe have a look at finishing off those two DACs as well for you. And if not, well, we'll see what we can do anyway. I know my camera work is not always the best, for those who haven't understood why. So I've got a box at the minute, so you can see wooden box with openings for my hands where I'm doing my prep. This keeps all the dust inside the box where I don't want any of it getting out. You can probably see everything's covered in a nice fine layer of dust, all of the light setup and everything. I've got some openings at the back, so that's where my power supplies are coming in, and the other side at the minute's blocked. That will be a ventilation setup when I've got a proper extractor, but at the minute I'm keeping the dust trapped by basically the armholes. I'm just having those two openings, and then just leaving it for some time to let the dust settle before I open it to remove anything. But because of my current setup, I've got a single light source up there. It does mean that the glare tends to pick up on this side. In particular, as I move specimen up there to get light, I am working to get another light potentially on this side of the box, which will then hopefully reduce that, as well as getting a better camera, because this one's only streaming at 720, so it's not the highest res, and we'll have fun doing auto focusing and everything, as you may have seen in previous streams. So please bear with me. If I do start wandering off screen, or it starts to get a bit bright, it's because I'm working towards the light and trying to get better vision of what's going on. The other thing, just to tell you what my plan is in general, is I'm going to work towards middle for most of this. I may not always do perfect towards the middle. I get a bit lazy sometimes and work back towards the specimen to try and just remove some of the rock when you know roughly where things are. It does help because the rock tends to pop away, but if you're doing that and it pops a bit earlier than you're expecting, or it doesn't pop as well as you're expecting, you can sometimes end up driving through the material and into the fossil. And if the fossil's soft, or as soft as the rock, these tips will mark them and you end up with little white marks all over your fossils, depending on how deep you go. So it's something just to be aware of, and why in general you should work away from the fossil that you're working on at any given time. Good starting points. The other thing, I'm mass removing matrix, so I've got, this is a power setting on the Dremel. It's turned all the way up to 5 at the minute, so it's the highest it goes. When I'm doing some finer work, I'll drop this down to 2 or 3. That seems to work pretty well for the fine tips on Yorkshire material. It's possible it should be down on the 1-2 level, but I tend to work around 2 or 3. That tends to be quite nice, at least for the stuff near Whitby, from my experience. I'm always open to suggestions, and I imagine people with air scribes are probably using a much higher power overall to start with to clear this, and it chunks in fairly nice ways, but then dropping to a much more precise amount when they've got the actual scribes for the fine detail. So I am relying on those who know for that information, as I do not have it myself. That all being said, I'm going to start prepping, leave you guys with the music. Feel free to just ask questions away, and I will try and respond as I can. But I am relying on trying to hands in and out of this box as I prep, so I might be a little obscure and sometimes a bit slow to respond, so just bear with it as I do. I've also realised this song's on loop, and I don't know why the song's on loop rather than the album. Give me 1 second to get that sorted for you. There we go, we've got some different music now, and I'm going to just get back to it. As you can see, the top of this is fairly soft at the minute, so it's making life easier. I'm just going to keep working through it. Trying to remove as much as I can in fairly large chunks whilst we're getting down to the middle. So I'm going to go back to muting and leave you with the music, so just send me some messages if there's anything you want to know about. And yeah, the noise is going to be going in the background, but there's something else I thought I should just talk a little bit about. So I'm going to try and demonstrate here. This angle that I'm currently attacking is too extreme, so you'll see that if I push with a little bit of force, nothing actually happens. The goal is to try and keep it at an angle that the stylus doesn't require a lot of pressure, the device doesn't require a lot of pressure, just to keep moving forward while still taking some material off the specimen. So as you see, I'm not applying a lot of force, but just enough to basically keep it moving forward. By doing it this way, you have a bit of control. This rock will pop off of the fossil, but if you get too steep, as you see like I've just done here, it'll get stuck. So you'd like to just adjust that. Sometimes you'll find that the rock just has an unusual tip on it or something that you just dig into. So you just need to go away and just change your angle, change the position that you're attacking it, to just go back and keep going. What you want to do though is, whilst you're doing this, is just kind of keep your prep tool moving. Ideally don't just stop, because if you stop and push down, so if I say I'm going to just use this spot here, I don't expect there to be anything in the middle. But if you just kind of go in one spot and just go down like this, what you can do very quickly is you end up with A, a deep hole, but B, then pushing into that same spot, you can be actually hitting the fossil without realizing it. So if there's a fossil directly in the middle of there, in this little hole I've now dug into this spot as a demonstration, if there's fossil right underneath there, we don't know if there is or isn't. What I then will have done is probably divot in that fossil. So ideally don't try and dive in to the specimen. It's also why you work away from them where possible, and always just kind of keep moving and take the whole lot down at roughly the same rate, because then you don't tend to hit the specimen as much. But yeah, it's why you'll see that you don't want to put too much force either, because again, if it pops away and you're putting a lot of force, it's very possible to just instantly go straight through the rock and straight into the specimen. But if you keep moving it around and find a few different angles, you might see like this chunk here has popped up, hasn't come away, but it just moves away. So if you attack a few different areas and keep moving around, more often than not the rock will pop away, but you just need to keep moving the specimen around, keep moving the stylus. Don't just stop and poke at one particular spot, because more often than not you won't actually get very far with it. So just keep moving. Eventually the rock will come away, or you can use a slower speed where there's less risk of you hitting a rock or hitting the specimen at a high speed and doing any damage. But as you see again, just slowly doing that, moving across a few areas, take off a bigger layer of rock. So it's just taking time with it, slowly but surely. One more thing to just highlight here, as I've been working away, I've just been looking at it. So I don't know how well you can see it. Try and reduce some of the glare coming off the light in the top there. So we've got edge of the keel here, but then you can see hopefully this line here. This line here is a break in the fossil a long time ago. Probably post-mortem, so after death of the animal. This is probably just as during the fossilization that this crack's developed. But it's something just to be aware of whilst you're prepping and removing this rock across here, or as I'm removing the rock across here. This is a post-fossilization break. whilst removing this rock, it may destabilize these sections. So it's something just to be aware of. If I get concerned, I'll put some of that B72, some adhesive basically, just to help stick it back together and hold it stable. I'm not too fussed. As I said, this is first Hildy, it's not a particularly well preserved one. So if it falls apart, so be it. But it's just to demonstrate it and keep working on learning this stylus, because this stylus is a new tip for me. So I'll put it back on the music and keep going with it. Sorry about that. I just had a look and I saw that the stream was stuttering. I think that's settled back down. So my laptop sometimes has power supply unit issues, which is why it sometimes will drop its speed. But what I've managed to do is on this edge here, the top edge, taking off the first chunk. You can see the next whirl starting to expose here. Hildoceras much easier specimens to prep so far than the DAX, just because they don't have those big ribs. It makes this a much smoother surface on the shell, and so the rock comes away much nicer. I will say I don't know where this specimen came from in Yorkshire. The ones around Whitby, the fossils around Whitby tend to be particularly sticky, but as you go north away from Whitby towards Port Mulgrave, I'm told they get a lot easier to prep, and I've been collecting up that direction a couple of times, so it's very possible that this specimen might come from up there. I don't know exactly. I didn't keep track of my little broken ones where they've all come from, so this one might be from further north where it might be easier to prep. Anyway, I'm going to get back to it. I'll keep an eye on the stream and hopefully it doesn't have any more power issues and stuttering. So, good demonstration of why you need to also be careful. I'm not paying much attention, I'm just trying to get down to the ammonite. I just went through a shell here. So if I was trying to keep that, obviously, bit of a disaster to be just going so aggressively through this rock that this shell got taken out. But I was going to probably take it out anyway because I don't care about it. I'm going to have to ammonite underneath all of this, so I need to remove all this anyway. But sometimes you find some nice things in the middle of these, so you might find other shells. One of the ones that I was working on yesterday, for example, which one was it? Yeah, this one has a beautiful little shell here with some nice preservation on it. Some lines are preserved on it. They're probably very difficult to see, but this little black thing in the corner here almost looks like a fish scale, to be honest. It's that sort of nice. So you just got to be a little careful depending on what you might find. Obviously I'm not being super careful on this Hildy, it's pretty rough and ready, but just to give you an idea of if you're being aggressive, not slowing down when you see things, you might well go through them, so you got to keep your eye on it and take your time. Something, or a couple of things worth noting that you might have noticed as I'm prepping. You'll see that some lines go that way, some lines go that way. Why am I doing them on lots of different angles? So you don't want to just keep going over and over the same direction, particularly like this, for example. If I keep going this way, what you end up tending to do is either making the individual grooves really, really deep, and then you end up with really tall peaks between them, or you basically can smooth the whole thing out and make it flat. You want to have a bit of topology, a bit of change in surface, because it makes popping bits of rock off a lot easier. These different bits of height pop off, and they're good for the this Dremel to be working through. And likewise, if you keep changing the angle, so for example, you see these grooves here, if I then go that way through them, you'll see that I'll take out each of these big peaks whilst I'm generating the next trough. And then I can go back the other direction, and therefore if you're alternating back and forth between ideally two directions that are roughly 90 degrees to each other, you can see mine are not quite, mine are sort of 60 degrees. What you then do is make your life a lot easier as you're prepping. Another thing to note, which you may have just seen, this bit here just came off a fairly big section. I tried to get it off earlier and it wouldn't come away. So I just kept taking more and more rock off, and then came back to it, gently did it, and then it came away. So if some of the big areas you're expecting to pop off don't pop instantly, just take your time with it, because chances are, as you remove a bit more rock, get down a bit further, less is holding it on. So when you come back to it and just give it another gentle go, when you're down another fraction of a millimeter or a couple of fractions of a millimeter, you might find that it just pops away. So don't force it, don't try and make it pop straight away. Just go, keep working down, keep working across your fossil, and eventually it will come away. The downsides that you can see currently of the Dremel is that everything gets really dusty. So I'm just going to give it a quick dust to just show you where I'm at with the fossil. Ideally a bit of water will make my life easier. So in one of the first videos I released, there was a little pot up in the top corner, up off screen, up that direction. And that was there as a little pot of water to help me just doing this section, just to get some of this dust away, and you can polish the shells up a lot quicker. So this Hildoceras currently have got, I'm going to use the back end of this, so I've got shell exposed up here, shell here, shell here. This is a fairly central bit by the looks of it inside here, so this was probably quite a big Hildoceras, or has been very horrifically compressed. That it looks like it's curling really quickly in here. So I'm not sure whether this ring here, this bit, is an inner ring for this outer one, or if it should be a continuation of this. So I don't know if we should have been out here with another ring on top of it, or if this is just compressed down really quickly. Kind of tough to tell, but as we keep exposing this edge here, we'll be able to tell soon. So it's going fairly quickly, and some of this shell is actually really nice. For example, you might just see how shiny this corner is here compared to the other bits that have been a bit exposed to the weather. The shell's really nicely preserved underneath it, so I'm hoping that it'll keep coming away fairly nicely as I go. But with a Dremel, if you don't have a steady stream of air like you might with an air scribe, you do need to just keep track of some of these bits that then disappear under dust as you're working on other bits. And it can become very easy to lose track of where things are, so do take your time with it, slow down, keep giving it a clean every once in a while, and don't forget to just also give yourself a quick break. It's also quite a good time just to stretch, keep your eyes a bit of a break, and give your shoulders and hands a break. That's the other thing. You might have wondered why I'm wearing gloves. It's not because I think they're particularly stylish, and mine definitely are not super stylish. Part of it is to control the dust, so as you can see there's a lot of dust on here. By keeping it on the gloves, when I take the gloves off and leave them in the container, it keeps all of the dust in the container, or at least most of it, except the bits on my fingers, but less on my fingers and hands this way. But also the middle of these gloves is padded, and that's to try and reduce the amount of vibration. So the Dremel works, as I said, by this tip going forward and backwards really quickly, and as it's going backwards really quickly, what it's doing is vibrating the whole thing like this, and this is all vibrating in my hand, and so if I've been doing this for an hour, 2 hours, you'll actually feel like tingly hands, and if you do it too long you can get stress injuries from it. So gloves is to try and just reduce that a little bit. I need a better pair that actually go all the way up to the fingertips, because I definitely get it in my fingertips. I feel the vibrations afterwards in my fingertips. So it's a sign that I need to do more to protect my hands. But I'm not doing this for multiple hours, usually in a day, at least not continually, whereas some of the professional preparators might be doing many, many hours, like 6 to 10 hours of prep a day. with higher vibration level tools, so they definitely have better gloves that will go to the fingers and pad it all the way up just to help reduce the amount of vibration. The other option that a lot of people do is they'll wrap these structures, whether if you've got an air scribe or the Dremel itself, they'll wrap this with a layer of padding just to again try and reduce those vibrations as much as possible. So something to be aware of. If you're not doing it an awful long time or very seriously, I don't think you need to worry, but if you're doing it for many, many hours, do protect your hands. Now back to it. So this is another fun bit, it's a good demonstration of something that I was trying to talk about earlier. So it's trying to go this way, following this along like this. I've hit a bit that's a bit too high, so I did that and it got stuck. As you can see, it did eventually pop. So the easy way to do it, if you're going in, you get stuck like that, it vibrates, makes extra noise. You either go a different direction around it and you'll eventually pop the rock off to get that one bit easier, or you can come at it from a different angle and try and remove that peak a different way, and then you can continue what you were doing that way, like that. So just something to be aware of. Don't try and force it through. If you get stuck like that, you're never going to get through unless you put a lot of force, but you'll hear the Dremel really dislikes it. You'll hear the vibration in the box and everything as well. Don't try and force that. Go around it, remove the rock in other places, try it from a different angle. A good thing to do with a lot of these is you can just, if you're like me, come in at one angle. If you get stuck, just change the angle, decrease it, and you'll see that you might start popping the rock off again. If you still can't get it, when you change the angle in your hand, just change the way that you're attacking that little bit of rock. So come from a different direction rather than changing the angle. I don't know how much of that was just muted, probably all of it, because I'm one of those clever people who forgot that I was muted. I was just taking a quick break, giving you dog view whilst I tidied up the inside of the box. The box has got a build-up of moisture on the inside, joys of condensation. But there's our dog, chilling out. I was just wiping down the inside of the box. I'll repeat what I was saying. So, middle of the ammonite seems to be in pretty good shape. It's right here. So this was quite a big ammonite once upon a time. If this is the middle here, the edge comes out. So what's that? 3 inches. So probably a 6-inch across. Yeah, there we go. That's what it looks like. I was trying to talk about the little white thing, the white bits that are visible here. This is the original shell. There's often a trade-off between keeping the shell or making your life easier with the prep. If you can keep the shell, it looks better in general, I'd say. But the downside is if you can't keep all the shell, then you end up with patchy bits. So it's a bit of a choice often in the prep, and also will depend on your skill. So there's that. But it's going all right. I'm gonna get back to it. Dog's looking at me very confused why I keep talking to the random computer thing. The computer keeps looking at me really confused why I keep talking to myself and not recording anything, but there we are. So I will try and do a little bit better. I do need to make sure I actually get a picture at the beginning of these, don't I? Then I can have a before and after. So when I'm going to take a break like I am now, I can just leave it where we're at, where we started. I'm really intrigued by this though, actually. This, I have no idea what this is here. It's not part of the shell of the ammonite. It actually looks like something has grown inside, so another shell looks like it has used the ammonite shell as a place to live. So it looks like we might have one shell here, just on the inside of the ammonite, which would be kind of interesting. Not all that rare, but nice if you can find them and preserve them. There's a bit of broken shell here as well that I'm just trying to going around. I'm hopeful that we're in the last sort of 20-30 minutes of this one now. There's only a little bit of rock, basically just this section here to come away. It also looks like we've got this whirl here, this one between the outer and this next one in, this bit in here, it might be completely crushed. So it'll be very interesting to see how that links up with this section here that we exposed earlier. But we'll see. I'm going to take a quick break. Doggo's coming to see what I'm up to, looking at me very sheepishly. Hello, Doggo. You're a good Doggo. Hello. So I'm going to take a quick break, give her some strokes, wipe down the inside of the box again as it's getting all steamed up, and I'll be back with you in a few minutes. It'd be nice if this focused though before I disappear, wouldn't it? That'd be too much to ask of a webcam. Actually figure out how to focus. There we go. Cool. I'll be right back. Brilliant. So last big push. Let's see if I can do this all now in one go. I'm hopeful it should go reasonably quickly. Also because the dog is looking at me with the belief that it's food time. She's about an hour early. It is not food time. Well, so much for the shell that was there. I didn't deliberately pop it off, but it popped in one go off the off the actual ammonite. But it wasn't that well preserved as a shell. I was going to keep it there if I could, but apparently just couldn't. What we are seeing though is the actual surface here is beautiful. It's got a nice sort of color and texture to it. This is the actual original shell, same as you can just about see up here, and it's actually beautiful. It gives a nice sort of yellowy golden color at the minute, and that might come out even nicer when it's actually given a wash. Unfortunately, it looks like it might just be breaking away again here, so we might only get a bit of it, but what we do have is beautiful. So I'm going to keep working around. Last little stretch, so not too far to go. It's starting to get to a point where I'm gonna find this last bit a challenge, I think, because I think that break that I talked about right at the beginning, the one that starts up here and comes down through, I think it's going to start causing interesting problems with this shell, because you can actually see the line where it comes down and through. You actually get bits of shell like this that is sticking up, and that's actually ammonite shell that's sticking out there. I can't get it to focus, can I? Come on. So this bit here that's sticking out, which probably isn't very clear, but for me, it's there. This is ammonite shell sticking out, and how do I know it's ammonite shell? Because on the side of it, it's got these little wiggly lines called sutures, which are basically the connections between the chambers of an ammonite. And so this little bit sticking out here is coming up out of the rock at a very interesting angle. So combined with the fact that this is crushed here, this is at a really odd angle, and then there's a break running there, makes me think that this is about to get really nasty in here. So I don't know how well I'm going to be able to prep this next section. So I'm going to probably drop the power on the Dremel down to a much lower one and see if we can just do this a little carefully and see what we can do. But I think it's going to just be a proper struggle this last little bit, just because of how it's preserved and how it's broken. It's a shame because it's quite a nice specimen, and the shell, as I said, is stunning on the bits that you can see it over here, for example. This is shell, and you can actually see the white thickness of it here, and this is the original shell here and here, and it's just beautiful. So I'm going to try and keep it all intact, but do what I can with the breaks that are in the rock already. So. Ooh, that is just loud enough that it drops my audio. Yeah, so I'm gonna just mute the microphone and try and remember that I've muted it when I come back. And if you're just wondering how I'm doing some of these bits and pieces, I know Tongle's definitely going to be super excited about it. But if you're just wondering why I'm going towards this specimen rather than away, as I had said earlier, you can make it pop. So if you get your angle right, you get a bit closer to the specimen. If it doesn't come away, you just move a little further along and just repeat the process, and you'll see as I do it, little bits are popping away. And if you are close to the specimen, you just have to be supremely careful how much pressure you put, because if you keep pushing, when it pops away, you'll just push straight through and into the specimen. So it's just working very slowly, sort of like this. Just go forwards a bit when you get close. If it doesn't pop, go along a little bit further and just kind of repeat along the length of it, and eventually it'll start popping away. So that's what you got to do. Just take it very slowly, and it gets very slow amount of work, as you can see. I'm going to even turn this off before I point and accidentally ding it. I don't know if you can see here. Come on, there we go. So what you might see is the actual thickness of rock that we're working with here is, we're talking tiny amounts. We're talking maybe 1 mil of rock overlying the shell, and so it's very easy to go through it. This is why it's really important to just keep going different places. Don't go deep diving grooves, no trying to dig all the way through this in one go. It's not going to happen. So it's just very slowly and gently. And as demonstrated, or as I said earlier with the brake, it's starting to prove to be a pain, that you can see here. So it comes along, and then there's a very distinct brake line right here. And then there's another actual chunk of shell that comes up. So this is a break again, and then there's the next layer of shell here. So we've got 2 or 3 little breaks in that section. My guess is they'll be similar down here on this one. Although the bit that has come out nicely, again, is this. So you can see the difference between the area where the shell is preserved and the area that isn't. The bit that doesn't have shell on looks absolutely stunning on this specimen. But it's now going to look a bit weird because the bit below it all has shell on it. So just an interesting bit of preservation on it, and nice to be able to show off all the bits and pieces. Right, I'm going to get back to it and keep going. And slowly losing the patience with it, which is normally a bad sign if you're trying to do delicate stuff. But I could like to get this one done. So we'll see where I'm at in about 7 more minutes, which is the 2 hour, 17 minutes is the 2 hour mark. So yeah, let's give it another 10-12 minutes and see where we're at. And if we're not done, then I might just stop it there and just finish it tomorrow, or early next week. And I've got those other 2 that would be good just to show you and get on with. But this is taking a while because it's, as I said, a bit messy in here. But it's going well. I'm quite excited for it. It looks really nice. Even if the fossil itself doesn't look great, the prep I've done looks pretty good. So I'm excited for that bit. I'll be back in a bit. Something else just to be aware of as I was just doing that. So I was taking the edge off of this. I've not messed up, don't worry, but it's just to show something that sometimes happens. I don't even know how this came off. But sometimes if you're doing a prep and you're trying to get an edge off, that way around, that's how it goes. Yeah, like that. So if you're trying to get the edge and you're pushing it, what may happen is it may just peel away, because that will be where it breaks. If you're not sure what's there and if it's important, if you look at the section, it's always a good test, and you should be able to see if there's anything there that you're after. There's a teeny tiny piece of shell, but it's not worth me worrying about for the amount of rock that came away. So I'm not going to worry about it, but it's just something to be aware of. If you are concerned, there's two ways to deal with it. One is you keep prepping and keep that piece separate, and then you can glue it back on at the end. The other bit is you could glue it down before you get to that point, or you just change what you're doing to prep and make it a really, really fine tip, really gently, and work around it. But as I'm not worried about it, I'm just going to take it off and keep going. But it's something to be aware of for your own. Yeah, I am getting to that level where I'm a little concerned I'm going to start making mistakes with this. It also gets even more complicated, this prep, as it goes along. Every time I think, oh, it can't get worse, it does. We've got shell preserved up here on the top of this chunk. Perhaps not surprising, hearing we've got shell preserved over here. But along this crack, you follow it down, and this bit that sticks out right here that you should just see, this is shell as well. So presumably from this section where it's fragmented, that I've seen down here fragmented, it's fragmented up here as well. So prepping this bit's becoming even more tricky. And I'm just afraid I'm going to start digging bits left, right and center. Which, fun as it is just to knock through the smaller, not important shells, the ammonite ones, I kind of want to preserve, and seeing I spent so long on it up to this point, like 2 hours working on it, I'd like to see if I can do this as a good job, because I think it's quite a nice piece. It's just unusual because it's so beat up and so broken, but everything's so well preserved within it. And I also quite like the fact that there's these belemnites, what appear to be belemnites at least, through the side of it. There's multiple here. So it'll be quite a cool piece, I reckon, but just very different. So what I'm going to do, take it out of the cabinet, give it a good rinse and scrub down, make sure I don't get any dust anywhere, but also try and give you guys a good chance to see the colours that I've been seeing on it without any dust on it, because it looks great. So I'll be back after I've given it a quick rinse. So it's had a quick rinse now, and I don't know if you can see the colors, but they look gorgeous to me. Like, it's almost white, the original shell on this. So it's just absolutely beautiful. So really nicely preserved shell. It's a shame it's not across all of it, but I also quite like this demonstration here. So this is what a Hildoceras will look like if all the shell is gone. You can see all the ribs here. but obviously the shell's on top of it and it looks very different. So you can see the different variations in what you might find as a Hildoceras. I actually really like this, even though it's a shockingly preserved section of ammonite up here. All of the bits of it are really cool. The shell, how it looks when it's got shell or not. And it's prepping quite nicely too. Chisel tip working a treat on this thing. So yeah, really liking it. But as I said, concentration's starting to go, and that's the nemesis of all preparators. As soon as you are starting to feel tired, you should just stop, because the best case scenario is you get it done. Worst case scenario is you break everything that you've been working on for so long, where you leave some new white ding marks on your specimen, which would be such a shame if you've spent hours working on a lovely piece. So that's where I'm going to leave mine for the day. I thank you all for coming along. I don't know how many of you there ended up being. Tongle, appreciate you being here as always, mate. So thank you for that, and I will be back streaming again probably next week, but I might finish this specimen off before then, and if I do, I will make sure to share that with you when I start the next one. So thanks everyone, have a good day and have a good weekend, and if you're out fossil hunting or prepping, I wish you the best with it all. Good luck.